And we are back for more
Back,
R&R on Sports. What?
back, back.
Every
Man,
week it
listen,
gets worse.
man, listen. Every time,
Every week it gets worse and worse, man. So either do it well or don't do it at all, okay?
no,
All
we
right.
back. I got to get the falsetto, man. The falsetto.
Weak. Listen, man, we are thrilled to have a returning favorite son for us. We've had him on R&R on Sports
Well, see,
before.
he's my brother.
Yeah.
You the only one old enough to be a dad, man. You old ass. I mean, for real. So
Okay.
come on, man.
All right, so
Talk.
what's your point?
Introduce our guest, man.
We're thrilled to have back with us on R&R on Sports NBA champion
Absolutely.
and all-star.
Uh-huh.
Recently retired. I mean, what, last couple of years?
Couple years.
Yeah.
He missed the whole last year of the KD going into the tank and tearing up his Achilles and all that.
All right. We're talking about none other than brother David West. Welcome back to R&R on Sports.
What's up, David?
What's happening? Thanks for having me.
Oh, man, one of the true warriors of the NBA right here.
Absolutely. Totally from Teaneck, New Jersey.
Yes, sir.
Home
Yes, sir.
of who? The greatest R&B group ever.
Isley Brothers.
Isley Brothers. There you go.
Yes, sir.
That boy been brought up right. He been brought up right. Howard.
Been raised right. Been raised right. The Isley
you know what?
Brothers.
Who else? It's a lot of jazz people that hang out in Teaneck as well.
Oh, yeah.
It's somebody from Teaneck. I can't recall who it is, but anyway, Isley Brothers come to mind first. Welcome back to R&R, man. We are glad to have you and want to jump right into all kind of stuff. I mean, I want you to give a brief history, brief background about your history and your career. But after you do that, you have always been a deep, thoughtful brother. I want you to weigh in just a little bit because I know we're going to end up talking about this and COVID most of all. But I want you to weigh in on what's happening in our nation and our world, particularly our nation. So go ahead. Give us a little background about how David West became David West.
Well, I mean, I was born and raised in Teaneck, New Jersey. My mother and father were folks that they lived in the city, and then when my mom and dad decided they were going to continue to grow the family, they moved into Teaneck, right outside of New York City. I lived there for 16 years.
Oh man!
Yeah, I lived there for 16 years. Played ball there. Went down to North Carolina. Basketball became a thing. It was really the way for me to just continue to grow and develop as a person. To be honest, as I reflect now, it was literally the tool that allowed me, the space to grow. Got a scholarship. Well, went to military school for a year. Got a scholarship to Xavier in Ohio. Played there for 4 years. Went on NBA for 15 years. Won a championship with the Golden State Warriors. Played with New Orleans, drafted by New Orleans, Indiana, played with the Spurs, and then ultimately the Warriors. It had a great journey. It went by fast. I was talking to one of my childhood friends yesterday. We went for a bike ride, and I told him, I said, bro, it seems like life is just moving so fast.
So fast.
It's just, wow. I'm like,
it's unbelievable, man. I think they're taking time out the clock.
Right,
I really do, man. Because
just going by so fast, but I've enjoyed my time. I enjoyed my time in the NBA. I enjoy the role that I'm in now, with a couple different initiatives. Continuing to work with young people, advising, young pros that are in the NBA now. Working with some guys in college. Just doing things that are nourishing to me. Hopefully, I'm going to enroll North Carolina Central in the fall. Get my master's.
HBCU.
Yes.
There you go. There you go.
So,
all right.
Going through that. So again, just enjoying the space that I'm in. Trying to figure out, again, a way to stay clear and contribute to, these larger conversations that we have to have.
Right.
The larger issues that we're dealing with in terms of the context of our society. So that's really it, man. I'm just again trying to stay humble, trying to keep my ear to the ground. to make sure I know what's going on, stay informed, keep myself balanced.
Well, before we go too far, because I know Howard wants to get into COVID and all the Black Lives Matter and some of the protests and things like that. Something you said in an interview where you basically said that if you all knew what was going on in the locker room that last year, that championship year with Golden State, you would be surprised that we made it this far. Now, you decided to keep that quiet. You decided to keep some of those stories quiet.
Yeah.
In The Last Dance with Michael Jordan, he really divulged a lot of things that were really should have stayed a part of the NBA fraternity, and kind of divulged some things that people didn't necessarily like.
Right.
What's your thoughts on The Last Dance, and what's your thoughts about Michael Jordan kind of removing the veil from some of the background stuff with the NBA?
All right, so I loved it, man, because I grew up in the 90s. Jordan was an icon for us on the basketball court. So I really loved it because at the time we didn't realize they were getting all that footage. Like, we weren't privy to that like we are now with all the social media and all that stuff. So I took from it some of the more humbling pieces of him, like watching him interact with guys in the training room after the game, watching him be an attentive sort of listener to Phil Jackson, watching him respect his coach. Like, I didn't realize he made those statements like, I'm not playing if I got to play for somebody other than Phil.
Right.
I was like 16, 17. So I wasn't picking up on that stuff and how important it was. That he was so loyal to somebody that he trusted and felt comfortable with, was still listening to, literally carrying I didn't realize that people were labeling him, the best in the NBA as a rookie or a second-year player. I didn't realize that.
Right.
And watching The Last Dance, like, man, he carried this thing on for a long time. So for him to have that level of respect for a coach, I thought was pretty unique. And then, in terms of the locker room stuff, like, again, there's certain things I'm just never going to say. I'm not going to cross the line for guys. I think we develop a trust in the locker room. But I think what was revealed in The Last Dance I didn't think they were like astronomical, blow your head off type stuff. I thought they're old enough now. These guys are 20, 25 years removed from this stuff.
Right.
I think most of them are at peace with, maybe Scotty's a little still mad.
I think Scotty might be a little salty, brother. He might be a little salty.
But everybody else seems like they're at peace with sort of where things went and everything. But I got a lot out of it. I've got a young son.
Okay.
He's 11 now. We sat down and watched it. I was able to kind of reminisce and put myself back in those teenage years and really have some good conversations around sports with him. So it was good for us, good for me, particularly watching him go through it. And he saw Michael Jordan in first time he learned about Mike was a baby watching the movie. The movie that they watched with the
Space Jam.
Space Jam. So that was his thing. And then watching him get a chance to see Mike as an athlete on the court, watching the on-court performance and stuff, I thought was pretty special, because now it made sense. Like, oh man, he was like that in real life. Like, it wasn't in the cartoon. You know what I mean? Like, so it was good. It was. I thought it was good. I didn't feel, as an NBA guy or former NBA guy, I didn't feel like what was said was too revealing. Because trust me, there are things that can go way out there.
Oh yeah.
So. I thought
sure. He said he was light, huh? He was real light.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Okay. All right, then. All right. Well, listen, this is Iron on Sports, and we're speaking with former NBA champion David West. What you got?
Well, speaking of that, and just before we go to the break, David, speaking of that, is there like a wall of silence with you guys? Is there like a sacred trust, if you will, of what happens in the locker room stays in the locker room? Is that the case in the teams, or with the teams that you've been a part of?
I mean, yeah, you have that general understanding, like, you don't want to reveal, like, guys are comfortable in the locker room. It's like, not being in an NBA locker room, I realize I don't have that. There's no space like that in my life.
Right.
Wow.
You don't realize that. Like,
and there has been all your career. It's been
right. You go in there, you can say what you need to say about your parents. You can get it about your lady. You can joke about your kids. I mean, it's just a place where you can kind of be yourself, and that the other guys in there are living the same exact life. So there's a level of comfort. So yeah, there's a line you just don't cross. Like, certain things you hear or learn, you just don't cross. And I think most of us, it's not something that you swear to or you ever really speak about. It's just we're in here. We're comrades. We're going through this experience together. It's very unique. The emotions, the feelings that we feel, the things that we go through, the highs and lows, the mental health stuff, the physical wear and tear, all that stuff is unique to this experience. And we try to make sure, at least from my perspective, that you don't violate that.
Okay, real quick, before we go to break, you got Steph Curry in the locker room with you. You have Kevin Durant in the locker room with you and on the court in practice. What's the most amazing thing right off the top of your head that you ever saw them do in practice?
So I've
seen them do in practice.
Yeah, Steph just making, just 40-something threes in a row.
Wow, man.
And I mean, like, moving stuff, not just standing there shooting, but moving. And then KD, just watching, I think watching him put, monster performances and just watching him come back the next day and outwork everybody in the gym that next day in practice.
Does he truly work that hard? I heard he's a real hard worker.
Yeah, he's a gym guy too. Like, KD really you ain't gonna catch him outside of gym sneakers, sweatpants. Like, that's who he is. He's a hooper. He's a gym guy, even with all the success he has. Yeah.
I don't know what all the fuss about Steph is with the 40-something three. I do that routinely. So y'all listening to R&R on Sports, and we appreciate it. We're going to be back for more with NBA champion and All-Star David West right after this.
Welcome back to Funky Politics, the hardest hitting political show on the planet. We have on today's show Kimberly Harrison Hicks, founder and CEO of Good Beauty Skincare, a company that has launched products formulated for the melanin-enriched skin. But prior to that, she served as chief marketing officer for a multicultural hair care portfolio supported by El Cateron company. She's done work for Unilever, Coty, L'Oreal, and of course Coca-Cola company. Sisters Deep, she's a breath of fresh air in our community, in our country, and she's out there and she's talking skin to me, which I really need to talk about this. My skin is really dry. But anyway, we'll be right back with more Kimberly Harrison Hicks right here on Funky Politics.
Kadzukian. Check out all your Kadzukian favorites now. Download the Kadzukian app, available on Android and iOS.
And we're back. For more R&R. That was weaker than the first one, Larry. So you mentioned your 11-year-old son.
Mm-hmm.
Share with us a little bit about what P&G, our sponsor here now, has come to identify as the talk.
Right.
Talk about your talk with your son.
Yeah, it's weird because I actually had the first one with him with Trayvon Martin, and he was 4 or 5 years old.
Wow, man, 4 or 5?
Yeah, because uniquely, this generation of kids, in school with us, they're in the devices. And they know how to operate these things. So when Trayvon was killed, it was everywhere. The whole not so much the video, but the media, what happened. Right. People were having conversations about it. And so he's a bright kid, a little bit advanced. We had our first conversation around Trayvon. He was young, really young. And then Tamir Rice happened.
Right.
And he was a little bit older then. that conversation became a little more real. Then we've had a few subsequent in-betweens, but then this last one, he's 11 now. He has ideas and thoughts,
right,
all his own.
Right.
He's made his mind up in a lot of ways based on, him being able to sit down and watch television. He's on YouTube, and he's had ideas about the country and who he is, and probably last Mother's Day or is either this past Mother's Day, not this past Mother's Day, so maybe Mother's Day past. So he was 9 or 10, and we went into Hallmark, and it was the first time I told him, "Hey, don't leave my side." And he, he's a big kid. He's already about 5'3.5", 120 something pounds.
Right.
And he's like, "Dad, why? I want to go." I said, "You can't leave my side in this store right now." They were I just didn't feel comfortable with him leaving.
Right.
We had to have a conversation around that. And these conversations are real life. I had to tell a friend, an associate of mine, I said, "Hey man, they were really asking me, what was the conversation like with this?" I said, "Look, this is an ongoing thing for us, Black parents."
Right.
It's not just one.
Right.
It's not just one conversation.
Right. It's an ongoing thing. So we've had this conversation. I don't watch the videos of our people being killed in the street. A couple years ago, I really got hurt by the Eric Garner one. And I watched that a couple times, and that really I still haven't shaken that feeling. And so I haven't watched them, but I saw the still image of this latest incident in
George Floyd. Are you speaking George Floyd?
Yeah, George Floyd, right.
Yeah.
In Minnesota. And again, the callousness, right? The proud manner in which the man, that still photo, he's got his hands in his pockets and he's just kind of staring into the crowd, willfully knowing what he was doing.
Arrogantly,
right.
And what you're talking about that we all saw was, I'll add another word, typically.
Right.
He was, the look that he had was
this
a
is
real routine.
Right.
That's what I do.
This is what we do.
Yeah.
Right. Very casual. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, listen, this is R&R on Sports, and we're speaking with NBA great, I will say great, David West. And David, you're in North Carolina, home of NASCAR. We just had recently the whole situation with Bubba Wallace, the removal of the Confederate flag. Being that you're in, and I'm sure being in North Carolina, NASCAR is very prominent there. What's your thoughts about the latest incident with the noose? And I got to see pictures of it, and that was a real noose, Howard. That's a real noose.
Right.
Hey man,
it was not a typical.
That's not an accidental thing, on my opinion. But this is David. This is David. So we want to get David's perspective on what you think about it, since you're in the actual city of NASCAR.
Right. So North Carolina is a part of the southern front, right? We know that we live in this state, in this southern environment, dealing with, but bringing awareness to who we are and our values. So I think right now, when we even look at the Confederate flag, we've got to completely continue to dismantle what it's meant for for the folks that lost. That's the way I look at it. And so dealing with this, with the NASCAR thing, though, it's like the symbolism is great. The noose that was tied, and it was a noose. I saw folks trying to give Jemele Hill hell about it.
That was a noose.
Man, that was a noose. That was a noose all day long.
And then they said in the other 30 garages, there was no other similar rope tied that way. So it was intentional. And who knows how long it was there. But we're always dealing with this. And this is the other thing, right? In this moment, I think white Americans are coming to grip with, certain white Americans are coming to grip with their privilege. They're voicing, their, I would say, their ignorance. They are humbly, some of them are humbly saying, look, I don't know, I need to learn. And again, it's a part of this structural change that we're undergoing. And hopefully, it's a turn for the better in terms of NASCAR, just not having that symbol readily available. I remember on my trip to Germany, I remember one of our guides, the guy telling us, hey man, if you fly, if you're caught with a Nazi flag in Germany, man, you are going to get the full extent of the law. Like even showing you can't have it in shops. Yeah, man, you can't have it in shops. They're serious. And we need to take a similar stance because, regardless of what people think and what their imaginations have led them to believe about Black people in this society, we have contributed heavily to the development and the growth of this nation without ever getting the benefit of the protection,
absolutely,
the just outcomes that this nation has promised its citizens.
Right.
And we have been that.
Right.
And, I think that people coming to grips with the fact that, we get mistreated by law enforcement, the police presence in our community is more detrimental and does more harm than good. I think is a serious, serious conversation that this society in general has to come to grips with. And a symbol like NASCAR saying, hey, this is for as laden as this symbol as, and as connected as it has been with our history, we've got to take a step, at least in the right direction, by removing it from our midst, removing it from our events.
Good deal. You're listening to R&R on Sports on the Kazukian Network, and we're talking to NBA great and all-star David West. David, so here's how I'm going to ask you this question. If you were still in the NBA, given the current situation and all of that, given your consideration and love for your family and whatnot, would you play?
Right now, that is a tough question. It would depend on where I was in my career. It would depend on, because I think you can't be wrong in this situation. I've told 100 guys this over the last few weeks. The only way you can be wrong is if you're quiet, is if you're not using your platform to help promote and continue the push for structural change. Because if I've got a chance to win a championship, if I'm with a team that I think has a legitimate shot, and then a team that's also committed to using the platform, using the opportunity that they're going to have in Orlando to, continue the social justice reforms that people are calling for, to continue to spotlight the grassroots organizations that are doing work in the streets, I would play. Okay. If I was a free agent and I had a payday on the other side and my team could not win, I would not play. If I was a new dad, like I am, we've got a 1-year-old in our house. So if I was a new dad, like some of these guys are, I wouldn't play. If I had injury issues, I wouldn't play. And also if I felt like internally that the organization that I was with was not going to maximize the opportunity for this platform, I was not going to continue to shed light on these issues. If my organization was just going to be complacent about it and try to ignore it as if it didn't exist, then I wouldn't play.
Now, 90% of the NBA owners have not said a word, nor have the NFL owners.
Right.
As a former player, what does that say to you? As a former professional athlete, what does that say to you?
I mean, I've said this publicly that that every single owner needs to say it publicly. People need to demand and ask them to state their position. Period. I've told that to players. that is a big concern, and it should be called out publicly. I see there are people calling them out publicly because you need to know the nature of these folks, and you need to know what's going on, because again, most of your business, most of the success, right, the idea that these leagues and these teams and the revenue that these players generate for these leagues and these teams, generational wealth that's produced for the people who are in positions of ownership and leadership, they owe it to the guys. And the players, again, the players have every right. I've said it publicly. Every one of them should be forthright in where they sit on this thing. This is not a middle of the fence thing, because this is about the way our society literally governs itself. Like we are, this is the year 2020. We are in the 21st century. We cannot have police officers murdering people on video. We cannot have outcomes that are continuing to be negatively or disproportionately affecting African-American community negatively. But we've got to get beyond this stuff with real structural change. And I think all of it is tied together, because the guys who don't want to play because they feel like they're going to be a distraction, I'm 100% with you. If you feel like you're going to be a distraction and going to take away from what is going on and the focus and the intensity of the moment, then I'm 100% in agreement with you. But I also recognize the immense platform right now that's going to be available with the guys, because it'll be the only pro sports, really, the first real taste of pro sports we're getting back. And it's a monumental platform. And I, again, like I said, I've been in communication with guys. I think the guys who are going to go down there are going to do the right thing. The guys who aren't going down there and are going to continue to use their voice, again, make a decision to protect themselves, protect their families. I have no problem with those guys either. I think the worst thing you can do, or the only way you're not going to be a benefit to anyone in this situation, is by staying inside.
Okay,
and
so
that goes for owners of these teams as well.
We got about 30 seconds left, and I'm going to kick it over to Larry, because he's got a real dumb question he wants to ask you. And I know he wants to ask it, and if I get out of here without allowing him to ask it, he's going to get his little...
That's not true. It's a great question, actually.
His little underwear in the water.
So once again, they're bringing you back. The NBA's bringing you back. You're about to get inducted into the place above the Hall of Fame. They bringing David back to mid-court in Indiana, because that's where you spent a big portion of your career.
It takes him an hour and a half.
So as they're walking you out to the middle of the court, every superhero has theme music. What music is playing, David, as you're walking to the middle of the court to get your props from the stands, from the crowd in Indiana?
It has got to be, man. My first thought was something like Aretha Franklin, because it would make me feel like I'm full of soul and full of life.
Feel like a natural man.
Yeah.
A natural man.
I don't, man, that's a hard question. I don't know. It would probably be
no Biggie, no Tupac.
Nah, because I would want something that just was. That's something that would touch.
No
people.
Isley Brothers.
Nah, that's a hard one. Maybe some Stevie Wonder.
Okay.
Yeah, something that would just touch people. I would want people to feel. I don't think Biggie or Pac wouldn't remember the moment. It would be too exciting. Aretha would make you remember the moment, like hearing one of her classic songs.
Okay,
would make you remember the moment.
All right, then. Cool. Well, David West, as always, brother, we love to have you on the show.
Absolutely.
And what you going to say now? Go ahead, Howard. What is it? What's the speech? The Coastal
no. He's already done it.
Okay. Well, he gives this old, he wants to be a mafioso guy, something like that in his next life or something.
When you get the call, you got to respond. You already have, brother. So I don't have to say that no more.
Okay. All right. Man, David, it is always a pleasure, man. And you will truly got a family here. Anytime you got something to talk about, you need to talk about, know that you got this platform.
Yes, sir. You guys be well. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you. Best to you and your family.
You too.
All right. Well, listen, we'll be right back with more R&R right after these messages. Don't go nowhere, because you might miss Howard showing you what he looks like without his teeth in his mouth.
Doing fine until you missed it.
We'll be
Back
right back. All right.